Webinar live streaming voorbereiden. All right, it's now streaming live. All right, welcome everyone to the fourth Codev call. We have a bunch of topics to go through. The first section will do some hot topics, which are things that people are specifically requested to talk about. And the second one will do more sort of general if there are some things that are missed or maybe just minor updates. And just a reminder to try to keep so awesome. I hear myself. 1 second. All right, that's okay. Now it's gone. So just a reminder to try to keep it to things that are relevant to at least a sizable minority of people here, and things that are just like discussed and outcomes that are future oriented as opposed to just giving updates about the past. With that, let's start with item number 1, which is Whisper key and other status reserved derivation paths. So the focus, the context of this is that we have to fix the derivation paths for the Whisper key. Database key, which is a range of derivation paths reserved for other status use in the future. There's a proposal posted and discussed. This is about the hard wallet. And the goal is to check if we agree with the proposal in order to proceed. Do you want to add something else to this? Maybe Andrea or Michelle?
Yes, there is also the point on how we want to implement this, because from a security
You disappeared.
Oh, sorry, I think I went. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was saying that there is the issue of not only of how we choose the path, there is also the issue of how we decide to implement this. I wrote everything in the discussed topic, and I wanted to clarify that if we store the keys in completely different paths instead of using a sibling of the account path, then of course we need to modify the applet to do more key caching, because it's impossible from a performance point of view to switch from completely different paths. So we would have to implement special case for internal keys and special case for account keys in the key derivation code. So this will make the applet more complex. So this is the alternative of accepting the proposal, at least that I've made. The alternative is to make more code in the applet to handle caching. So is there any any comment on this? Is everybody familiar with the discussed topic? So Corey, Andrea.
So would it be possible like to have different like parents in memory, or is it also a problem with memory or other stuff in the hardware that we have in the cards we use?
It is possible because we don't use all the memory. We use a small part. We can implement caching. It's just more complex to handle, because we will have to detect the special case. So okay, this key path is important. I have to cache it separately from everything else, because I always have to keep it. And then I have the account path. It also has to be cached, so we need to add a lot of code, a lot of complexity, and when you add complexity, you are potentially adding some security issues, because the applet is not as readable as it is now. And so it's possible, but we have to deal with the complexity of it. That's the reason why I want to get a decision as fast as possible, because now we are having a security audit, and I would like to have the final version of the applet audited and not only the current state.
So
what's the time
it
frame?
might be that people. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, what's the time frame and changing the applet based on implementing caching so we can do this? Because I don't. What are the other alternatives other than not separating them, which I don't think would be good at all.
The alternative to doing caching is using the key path as I've proposed, because it uses mechanisms that are already in the applet, and they don't require special cases. So the only modification that we need is to the export key command, because the export key command now has a hard-coded list of keys which can be exported. This is great from a security point of view because you cannot export anything else. But if we think that we might need to add keys to this list in the future, then this does not work because the applet is not upgradable. And so then every time we decide to add a new key, for example, we now have Whisper and database, then maybe we want to add something else. It's not possible without issuing new cards. So we have to modify the export commands, and I also given 3 alternatives. The first is to make the list of paths dynamic. This is good, but this requires also allocating some memory to keep this list. And this requires also a little bit of complexity, but it's not so bad. The real problem is that if we use the card with several clients, then every client, they might not agree on what is the list of paths that needs to be exported. So it's a little bit complex. The second alternative is to recognize a range of keys which can always be exported. So it's my proposal with C0 prefix to the key index. And the third alternative is to keep it hard-coded. But if we keep it hard-coded, it's okay, but we need to be sure that we add all the keys before going in production. So everything that we might possibly need to this hard-coded list, then it's okay. Otherwise, if we need to update it dynamically, then of course it's not working.
Which is your preference?
My preference is the version 2, so the using a prefix, because it's easiest to implement, and also it's very flexible. Because if we say with this prefix, there are always internal keys. We know that we do not have to use this range in any of the for accounts or anything else. And
do we have any objections to going with that? Because it might be that people don't sort of have enough experience or sort of knowledge about this topic. It might just be, if that's your hand, just go with it, unless there are any major sort of disagreements.
Outside of the one I voiced in the discuss channel, I don't have any problems, which I think you handled nicely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So are people all right? Should we move forward with that one? The second preference?
Sounds good to me.
Prefix?
Yeah, for me as well.
All right, cool. Let's move on to the next topic. So it's Adam and the rate limiting, and the context here is on sort of peer-to-peer front. The fact that we are running on a mobile device, so we limited the setting around the proof of work, which is what we use which is what Whisper is based on. But it makes our sort of mobile nodes vulnerable to denial of service attacks and spam and so on. And some questions on what to do about it. And the goal around this is to spread information about the idea as it touches chats and also collect feedback. Do you want to elaborate on that one, Adam?
Yeah, I can quickly elaborate on that. So, yeah, as you know, we have this POW, so proof of work value set to super low number on mobile devices, which pretty much, and proof of work in Whisper is like the first like defense against denial of service attack or spam attacks. And yeah, we cannot really use it because when you send a message and you have high proof of work value, then you need to compute a lot of, run a lot of computation on your mobile device. And that, of course, leads to draining battery and high, increased CPU usage. So that's why we disabled it like a long time ago. And that's how it is since like, over a year. And yeah, like doing that, put our cluster and also mobile nodes in some kind of uncomfortable position where it can receive a lot of traffic. Because the another mean that can reduce traffic is Bloom filters, and Bloom filters, we are using them and they're cool. But yeah, we thought that we need something more, some another layer of defense. And here's like the rate limiting that Dimitri is right now working on. So it's pretty much like another layer. So we have proof of work, Bloom filters, and now we have rate limiting, and it's just gonna like drop peers who that send you the most messages. Also, what's very interesting for people from working on the chat is that we'll be able to tell user which chat room or topic uses the most traffic. So, for example, if you join some public channel, and it just like a lot of people is chatting there, and you'd like to limit the number of messages that's received, number of the traffic, you can just you could just unsubscribe from that channel for a bit. For example, if you're abroad and you don't want to use your data plan or something like that. So I think that could be super cool. And yeah, that's what's possible with this. So if you'd like to more about the implementation details, then talk to Dimitri in Core Infra channel. I guess that's the best place. But yeah, that's pretty much the proposal, the thing that we are actually experimenting now. And Dimitri already created a couple of pull requests, so it's gonna be pretty soon ready to run some real world experimentation. So, are there any questions about it?
Yeah, I guess something else that came up from F Berlin is we wanted to see, I kept asking what the point of, or like how far Whisper can scale on like a fundamental level. And there doesn't seem to be any literature involved with like scaling tests on how far Whisper can go, even with or without Bloom filters, with or without proof of work, so on and so forth. And so we started up I don't know if you would call it a swarm, but a group to try and simulate and test this so we can have hard numbers on what the limits of Whisper can actually do. And I think we have some Guillermo, the implementer from Whisper, involved in this. Igor knows more about his involvement in regards to this. And because that way we need to know like what the limits of Whisper are, which are basically what the limits of our communication, like how many people we can onboard to use status is. Because if that's small, we'll have to start figuring out a way to either make that larger or change what we're doing so that we can on-ramp as many people as we need to, while also offering whatever functionality our users want.
Where is this work happening? Is it some chat channel or where?
Yeah, there's a Slack channel called Breaking Whisper. And
I think
awesome.
Yeah, it seems like a great initiative. So I also know that, for example, test team was running some load testing on the current cluster. I'm not sure if that might be useful for you guys, or I know, not really, but I guess that would be cool to also ask them how they did it, because I know that
I'm using that same as well already.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
We're going to start editing that so that I can get metrics a minute. Igor, I think your microphone is screwing up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really. I just wanted to tell that...
Your mic is doing a lot of static.
That's weird. Okay.
Okay, it's stopped now.
Unmuted him. Igor, let me try again. Unmute. See if it's better.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
It's still happening.
Igor, do you want to type instead?
Don't be silent during this meeting. Okay.
If you type and we can talk, say what you're saying.
Well, I guess the main motivation for this that I wanted to make clear is that there was some copy that wanted to go out that was basically pinning us to Whisper. Like, we are special because we use Whisper. And I wanted to move away from that a little bit, because if Whisper can't scale, then and we're tied to it, that's bad for us. I would rather say these are our principles and we use Whisper because of that. But if Whisper breaks, we can move on to something else that also satisfies our principles. But in the meantime, we're using Whisper because that's currently what works and provides like the darkness that we want.
100%.
Yeah, I think that also what we started discussing, like I guess in Basel or even earlier, was the idea that we like to build a protocol that work well on kind of decentralized peer-to-peer layers, but not necessarily on Whisper. It might be something different like PSS or whatever. So yeah, I'm like 100% for not like being tied to Whisper in any way. Then it's just the best what's now available, but it does not necessarily mean that we are gonna use Whisper like forever. Yeah,
Mark has started a document that's in the channel as well that basically frames the issues from a metaphoric.
It's in the Whisper series channel.
In the Whisper series channel, there's a Hack It MD document, which is the beginning of introducing those ideas, rather than the whole the 3 document series. If anybody wants to take a look at that.
Can you send some link to that? I've never seen that.
It should be in the Breaking Whisper channel.
Yeah, it's in the Breaking Whisper channel. It's just posted.
Oh, okay. I see it. Cool.
A point was made that we're still is this something we want to talk specifically about rate limiting right now? Even though this is a great sort of point regarding Whisper scalability and so on, but is there something else on this topic?
No, I'm still coming up to speed on cataloging what we've done differently in Whisper and to put out. But the basic message is pretty easy to explicate. If we wish to have opaque metadata. Sorry,
I mean about rate limiting. So the question is just in the interest of time. Right now we're on rate limiting. So is there something else in terms of feedback that people want to give to Adam and Dimitri?
No, not at this time.
Right, cool. And I guess we can revisit this at the end, because it's also talk about PSS as well, item 5. But before that, we have also peer-to-peer team on rethinking mail service with log-based communication. I guess a lot of them sort of tie together. I just want to make sure that we cover items as listed, so we don't miss anything like that. Adam, do you want to go through that one?
Yeah. I think I put a link here later, but on Discuss, there's a couple of great posts that started like, and also on Slack, that we started talking about log-based communication. So instead of like spreading that you send a message to the network like in Whisper, it would work this way, that you append your messages to a log and publish this log at some intervals. That, of course, is from the like communication perspective of view, it's increased latency, so it's not like super real. Like it's basically not real time communication. It's kind of near real time, something like that, where you need to synchronize some logs, and that's how like primary it works. So there's this thing that's called Scuttlebutt, and it pretty much works this way. There's like a peer-to-peer network where you like each identity, each node publishes a log with their messages, and other peers synchronize it locally, and they have like a history on locally. And we started thinking that maybe we could remove mail servers using this log-based communication. So how would it work? So instead of having mail servers, each peer would append their messages to a log and publish them like periodically to Swarm, because that's probably the best solution in this Ethereum world. And in this way, other peers would just sync those logs instead of asking mail servers for historic Whisper messages. The huge point here is that we would remove mail servers as kind of third parties that right now are necessary for like the communication, like offline communication, but they are not really playing well with the decentralization principle, where you want your nodes to be self-sufficient and just remove all third parties. So, so the idea is that maybe we could build like POC where we could remove mail servers and try to build this offline communication based on log communication. The huge point, right? The huge drawback here is that we do not have like light Swarm client. I think that touches like one more topic that we have like below about light Swarm client, but that's huge missing part in my opinion. And until we have it, it could be hard to achieve other goals like darkness and other things. So that would probably need to use some HTTP Swarm gateways, which I think is still might be a better solution than using mail servers. So so yeah, this is somehow that kind of was put together based on different ideas, but we haven't really started working on that. So the goal here is to if you guys have like some feedback about it, like some thoughts, and yeah, like pretty much figured out if we should start working on this more seriously. So build some POC, and whether we want to, yeah, it kind of depends. For example, on the light Swarm clients, if you want to invest some time into that, and yeah, like build quite a different solution that might be much better than what we have now.
I talked with the Origin guys at ETH Berlin, and they have a new, I guess they use Whisper, but only, I think, to initialize communication. Or they're doing something with a comms protocol that they wanted us to look at that they just released on their platform. You initialize it, like the initialization step is basically signing a message, and then everything else is off blockchain. And I wasn't sure how they're relaying the message, but they said that it worked pretty well. And I don't think that's using Scuttlebutt, is it?
You talked about Origin protocol?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, like I've seen their blog posts. So they are using IPFS, and yeah, they're pretty much based on IPFS. But that's what they are doing is, I guess, super like pretty close to log-based communication. So they are actually posting these messages to IPFS, and they use PubSub from IPFS to distribute the information that something changed. So so yeah, I'm not sure about like details of this PubSub and IPFS. In Swarm, there's this sound again. In Swarm, there is mutable resource updates that guys are improving right now. So there's open pull request that might be great for that, because in mutable resource updates, you just have one hash and you just update where it points to, like the content, but the hash stays the same. So that's pretty cool. Also, I think that even if we decide to push this, Whisper would be used for like reaching the low latency and discovery of other peers and so on and so forth. So I don't think like log-based communication at this point, without some additional features of Swarm or if built on IPFS, could support like real-time communication. It can be useful for offline communication, but still something like Whisper is needed to achieve this idea that like the user experience that you communicate with others in real time.
So a few questions. One, is it possible, like, can we create like a generic interface for seeing the existing mail server or Swarm or IPFS or anything like this, and then we could even have like it be redundant, so we can sort of try out all of them, but they sort of have roughly correspond to the same API? That's one question. Second question is, maybe start with that one.
I think that's definitely possible because both IPF, at least from what I figured out so far, is that like both IPFS and Swarm has very similar features. So, for example, I mentioned about this mutable resource update. This is very similar in terms of concepts in IPFS.
It's just a content hash. Yeah.
And if I could add to that, so I met with Trent McConaughey this week, right before I left Berlin, and what DigitalOcean is planning on doing is load balance. They're going to be launching really soon load balancing across AWS, Swarm, and IPFS, where you can basically choose on an algorithmic basis how the load balancing is done across traditional infrastructure, and then Swarm and IPFS, which is really interesting.
And then the second question. So if we were to move to something like Swarm, like how do we have a plan for, even if we use gateways? Because right now my understanding is that it's not, you can't guarantee that's actually going to stay online, the content. So that could be like a pretty big break in user experience if we can't guarantee that content stays online. So if we sort of move to something like that, considering the state Swarm is in right now, do we have a plan for how to deal with that?
I think it's pretty similar to my servers right now. So maybe not pretty similar, but for my servers, we run this on our DC, and we make sure that the data are not gone, right? But this is pretty poor in terms of like decentralization, because we run all my servers. And now if we decide that we want other people to run my servers, we have no really means to check if those my servers run by other people are like storing all the messages. So it's super hard. That's why initially we started thinking about some incentivization and validators that can make sure that what other my servers store is actually like full history of all messages, and not like some just partial historic messages. So I think that this is pretty similar to this. So as long as Swarm removes data, like the protocol level, I mean, I think it's not on protocol level. Some messages can just disappear because nodes, like no one really stores the data, right? I'm not exactly sure about this. So for example, if we run some Swarm nodes and we keep this data, this just for example, let's assume that we can decide that we keep data for those nodes. And if we keep this data around, I guess they will be available as long as they are somewhere stored like permanently. So we could, like, this is, in my opinion, it seems like the same like we would not lose any functionality, anything by moving from my servers to Swarm. That's my impression, but I'm not sure about all the details.
There's also some issue to consider that I've seen that haven't been mentioned. So if you move to a log-based sort of like communication protocol, mind that like you're moving to sort of like it's a pool model. So I ask for what I'm interested in, right?
Yeah.
So currently it's not very what like Scuttlebot was meant to do, to be social network. It works fine for a social network because you follow people and you pull their messages. For a chat, that doesn't really work well. So you can look around at what people done with Scuttlebot, and they tried to build chats, and none of them was very successful. Mind that like as well, to provide darkness, it's very difficult because when you have a pool model, the burden of discoverability is on the publisher. And that's what Whisper protects, mainly the publisher and also the receiver. But, like the publishers primarily, you don't know where the message originated from. With a log-based model, it's very difficult. And currently, like if you look at secure Scuttlebot, for example, you know who's the publisher and you know how many messages is published and when message is published. You don't know who the message was published to, thanks to some encryption.
Right.
So,
But But with Whisper, in theory, you can also hear like the network. You can record this all the time, and you get like some information. I mean, you get information like, for example, how often this particular node sends some messages, right? How many of them?
Because you don't know whether they've been relayed, right? That's the whole thing. You don't know whether like a Whisper has relayed a message or published the messages.
No, not in our case, because our mobile nodes, because of the traffic consumption, they only publish, they never relay. So that's sort of, so right now we don't.
I was under the impression that they relay
secrets.
messages. If you're subscribing to a topic, they would relay that topic. That was my understanding.
No, I don't think we relate from the mobile devices to anywhere.
Yeah, there was this function that we implemented that to not rely messages at all. But yeah, I think it was never enabled on mobile devices. That was merged to upstream, but I'm not sure if that was enabled. So
we are relaying messages that we are subscribed to.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that we provide darkness. Log-based communication, very difficult to provide darkness.
Yeah, that's definitely a drawback of that. So that's why we also thought about the idea that that it's hard to like the head of this log is not attached to identity, but you exchange the unknown hash using Whisper, for example. So you can't really like associate a hash to a node.
But then, if the hash has been discovered, it's the same. I mean, eventually, if you get to a point where you need to make a request with a secret key, you can keep it secret as much as you want. But eventually, if that goes out, like you can.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have a suggestion. I have a suggestion regarding the mail servers. And I mean, the idea would be to do it in a more decentralized way. We could do something like a service nodes. And the idea that anyone could be a node, like I could be a node, anyone could be a node. And assuming the data is encrypted already, basically a node would do a promise in a contract that he would return the data somehow. And he would put a deposit. And so would, say, the user. And if on the time that the user requests the data, if he doesn't get it, then he gets the deposit and vice versa.
Yeah, I think I'm going to describe what we talked so far. But yeah, we also discussed this solution where anyone can run a mail server, and there is like a set of validators that try to measure all the peers, like the mail servers. And decide which of them is keeping all the data as it should, and based on that, you could somehow figure out which mail server is the best, and also if the incentivization layer is implemented, then you of course can charge a little bit more if your mail service has high uptime and deliver all the messages all the time and store them for a long period of time. So yeah. That's also like what we discussed. Maybe I'll just create a discuss topic about it. But yeah, that's something that we also looked into a bit.
One concern that I also had. Sorry.
Go ahead.
One concern that I also had about moving to Swarm and getting rid of mail servers is regarding push notifications. One of the ideas was to have mail servers also be part of the infrastructure for push notifications. So if we deal away with that, we have one less solution available for push notifications. Just something to keep in mind.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about it. So
that's a great point. Yeah.
Yep.
I think to me, the primary problem with the mail service is just the fact that one of the reasons you want to have a decentralized system is because you want to have availability and the kinds of these, and with mail service actually worse than it would be with the sort of more centralized kind of setup. So the main problem is just the fact that you're tied uniquely to one mail server. So if we can just find a way to spread the data, so it doesn't matter which mail server you connect to, but they provide that service and the data is everywhere, then maybe you could still have that kind of push notification ability.
Yeah, maybe a solution is to actually have some hybrid, like to figure out some hybrid solution where mail servers could use pretty much Swarm or IPFS to store this data instead of offloading this responsibility on users. So that was also like described in one of the Discuss posts that I posted before this log-based messaging. That was pretty much like something like this, that mail servers would still be running, but they would use IPFS or Swarm as a storage data. And there would be a set of like mail servers who propose some like envelopes that they're going to store and validators that do that. And kind of there's like one index of messages, of all Whisper messages, like one index where you can efficiently search for them. That's also like super... using my hands to explain, but yeah.
Would it be possible to have like similar like BitTorrent in some ways, that you have multiple mail servers that all stores of the same data, and then you query several of them, so you have a random set of some number of mail servers, a few of them, and then whoever gets back fastest, that's the one you get. So it's not tied to any individual machine, any individual node. Would something like that be reasonable?
I think that could work, yeah. So in this idea that's described on Discuss, it was said that it might be like there might be like multiple indices of many like competing indices of historic messages stored on Swarm, and yeah, they would compete with like which log is the most like collects the most messages and so on and so forth. So there was also such an idea. Yeah, it's still like super unknown about the implementation, but yeah, that might be something possible.
Yeah, but if mobile nodes can also write like Whisper messages to like IPFS storage or something like that. Let's say if the TTL is close to like the Whisper message, it's close to being expired. So any node, including the mobile, can write it to IPFS or Swarm or something. That also solve the issue with the darkness, because then you never know if this node actually posted a message or it wrote someone else's message on IPFS. But in general, in this case, like you always trade traffic and darkness, right? Because if you want to use as little traffic as possible, you will lose darkness. If you want to have darkness, then you will use much more traffic, like X times more traffic than otherwise. And it's a good trade-off to think of. What do we want to achieve in the end? Do we want like a perfectly dark like messenger, but then your monthly traffic will go away very quickly? Or do you want something that works much longer, but then has less of the darkness properties?
Well, this is something that came up that I had a question about in terms of like our overall goal. Do we need to provide full darkness by default, or can we have certain modes that give certain types of communications and then different protocols that then route those messages appropriately? Like if 99% of everyone's traffic or communications on status, it doesn't need to be dark, then we don't need to use a completely dark protocol to do it, but enable completely dark messaging if you want it in the 1% of people who need it.
So that's a good question. And we also need, in terms of thinking about darkness more rigorously, that's something we haven't done really, and it also impacts things like push notifications, where you're actually tying two specific machines together, and the same with the mail server. So I think previously we have said that we'd be all right with having two modes, but that hasn't been sort of set in stone yet. But definitely one way of simplifying the problem. Yeah. I guess a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe if some users use the relaying of messages and some don't, how someone looking the network can figure out if they set up this configuration that uses more data or not. So maybe just by having the option enabled for some users, then someone looking the network cannot know if they are using or not this feature, because all the messages are encrypted. So
I mean, you can guess by traffic size and things like that. If you watch long enough, there will be big enough correlation between the people who relay and who not with the traffic consumption. For instance, it all depends on the time. So, but sometimes it's enough to have a little bit of a difference that correlates that to just figure out these people.
So, sorry.
So maybe we could try to fake this. Maybe we can make like, if you always send some small traffic, I don't know, we can try something.
So just, sorry to interrupt, just in the interest of time, just on the topic, like, should we start, is this something that we can start working on a proof of concept regarding this sort of mail server and log-based communication? And then second, do we think moving to log-based communication is like a completely separate thing, or is it something that we can do gradually as part of making sort of mail servers better in some way?
Yeah, I think we can experiment with desktop because we don't need the Swarm-like client for it.
But also we should understand what we want from these, because it seems like we jumped on a technical solution without really considering product. I mean, log communication is nice, but it's nice for developers. It means nothing to someone else. So if we want to get rid of mail servers, and if that is the goal, then let's just look at all the technical solution that we can find getting rid of mail services for decentralization, rather than jumping on one. Because personally, I don't feel it's very well suited for what we need to do, especially for a chat point of view. Using IPFS and Swarm as a storage backend, then it makes much more sense for sort of mail server or live mail server. So I think it should be sort of like, we need to have an objective. What do we want first? If it's just getting rid of mail servers, then probably we should consider more solutions, not just one.
Yeah, that's a good point. So from my perspective, that's from my and peer-to-peer team perspective, that's what we like to do. We want to get rid of mail servers, because it's very hard to decentralize, and you need to have some validators, incentivization layer to actually make other people to run it. No one's gonna run it just like that, because it doesn't make sense to anyone. So yeah, we would like to get rid of that. So what you said, like trying to build mail servers based on Swarm maybe has more sense, because like in this flow with the future incentivization layer on top of Swarm, we would maybe just attach to that instead of figuring out incentivization layer on our own. So but yeah, maybe there are other solutions for that. But from my point of view, getting rid of mail servers is what we want to do here, not necessarily figure out communication from scratch.
Can we, just in terms of gradual steps, can we still work in, so one is maybe around you just using the existing interface and improving the backend data storage thing, because I think that was also one of the pain points, and then the separate discussion around sort of overall log-based and these things, and removing it altogether, because we still had the sort of constraints that Pedro mentioned around push notification provider and these things. So doing it sort of gradually, to sort of a complete overall of everything we're doing, because that's a larger discussion probably.
Yeah, I think like if we maybe try right now to solve this one problem, which is maybe we could leave mail servers, but just remove, like switch the storage layer. So maybe try to use Swarm or IPFS for mail servers as a storage layer, and maybe make those mail servers to work together on a single offline history of Whisper messages. That could be super cool. That might solve like huge part of the problem. So
is there enough under topic 3, or is there something else that someone want to talk about regarding this?
I can just mention two. Yeah, I can just mention two small things. One is Andrea started actually trying to make the mail server work with storing its database in Swarm when we were in Cardona. So I don't know how far he got with that, but it might be interesting to investigate. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is that like log-based communication, it's not like we keep doing what we're doing and then we just throw a log in there. It's a ground up. It's a completely different way of looking at the problem from the ground up. And the most important thing about it is not whether the data goes into Swarm or not. And the most important thing about it is that all the clients are equal. You store your own log on your device or on somewhere first. That's like the first principle according to which this operates. And then on top of that, in order to make communication easier, you might add something like Swarm, or you might add something like IPFS, or you might add something like mesh network communications through Bluetooth or whatever it might be. But all these are sort of add-ons in the system that you throw in there. So it's good to think about it this way, right? If we want to go down that route, it's also from a product perspective, as Andrea was saying, it's a different product. We need to be clear about that.
We could do some UX research around this as well, in terms of how people would understand like the difference in latency.
And what happens with those systems is basically that you can get the normal latency of a messenger by doing tricks, and then it degrades gracefully as your connectivity options degrade. So if you're not able to get in touch with one of those helper servers, then it's a little bit slower. But if that works, then you can make it more or less as fast as Whisper. For example, even by sending a Whisper notification, hey, there's a new message, right? That's just a stupid solution that you can use.
Yeah, and I think latency is actually like, I agree with Jacek. I think latency, like, you can get it working fine. They had the problem with the log-based communication that it tends to be a pool model. So if you look at the chat implementation, they tend to have, it's difficult to discover new content. Not discover new content, but sort of like, I want to communicate with that user, and that user doesn't know me. So that's a completely different product. And, so that needs to be thought out from a product perspective. Because it's not
and we actually have several secure messengers to look at, like, I don't know, Briar and Tox and so on. They all use, and Scuttlebutt, of course. They all use variants of this pool model, which is very powerful.
Just someone who wants to dive deeper into this and maybe write up some idea of like what the trade-offs are and what the first steps of this would be. I know Jessica has already done like lots of legwork on this one, but just someone else who want, in terms of moving this forward and seeing what we need to do on a sort of product level and so on, if this is a switch we want to make in terms of how we fundamentally think about that.
Oh, I always see the mail server problem as being that you use Swarm to host the message, but the mail server would look like more just notification servers. But of course, then user will have to download from Swarm, and maybe they would have to pay some tokens. I don't know how the incentivization will be with Swarm.
Sure. Let's move on to it. It's worth revisiting as well next call, and maybe before that, we have some follow-up conversation. I guess, Adam, do you want to go into the next one, or what are your thoughts? Or do you think we should skip it?
I mean, it's not super important, so we can skip it. I didn't just maybe without discussion. So I can say that we're still kind of working on a solution how to convince, like how to allow more people to run status nodes. Right now, we want to go with documentation first, because we currently do not have any documentation. If someone would like to run a status node, it's super hard to figure it out without asking us. It's very hard. So we start with documentation. We have some contacts to guys building Meshbox. but where we could run status. So that's another thing. And as I mentioned, for example, mail servers, we try to figure out how to solve this whole mail server issue. And right now, when status desktop is being like kind of quirky, that might also be very interesting in terms of having just nodes around the globe that serve, like pass whisper messages around. So if we, for example, get to the point when there's like hundreds of status desktops running around the globe, maybe we don't have our whisper nodes at all in our DC because they could handle the traffic. It's still unknown, but that's maybe the future. So yeah, that is the thought.
That would be interesting if we can remove the high availability requirement for individual mail servers if the backend is such.
I mean, for mail servers you cannot. For mail servers you cannot remove that because they need to listen the whole messages. But for example, we could maybe get rid of
if you remove the data backend, right?
I mean, yeah. If each node could store it, that so it's like even like another step. But yeah, that would be super crazy and also super great. But even like getting rid of our whisper nodes that we need to keep around, for example, and just rely on status desktop, that would be super nice, super great. But that requires a lot of status desktop instances running around the globe, right? But I guess that's the goal, right? Here, we're building this whole thing.
Well, we should have 100 nodes next month if we want Oscar to pay.
There's something blocking that node integration, by the way?
Not really. Yeah, that's also on our radar. It just like step by step. Just and maybe I can talk to Jakub to maybe get someone else who could do that. But yeah, I just wanted to focus on the docs because that's the missing part. So even if we get to the app node, we still there would be no documentation for like people who would like to run it on DigitalOcean, whatever. So I thought that's the first step. So if we have documentation, that is going to be much easier to also put status node on a different devices because there will be like step-by-step instruction how to run it, like what flags use and so on and so forth.
All right. It's I guess next they're all connected kind of. Does anyone want to say something else around this sort of topic? And maybe desktop and its possibility to, or should we move on to PSS and integration? All right, so next one is around the Swarm and PSS integration and sort of Whisper future. And I guess maybe we can talk if there was something else around the sort of breaking Whisper kind of session. We can take this here as well. Do you want to take over?
So I wrote this one. So there was a couple of things. The first one is that Guillaume, who is in charge of Whisper development at Ethereum Foundation, asked if we can try the peer-to-peer branch for Whisper, but I think Igor already gave him the information, so he needed to try it out by himself, right?
Yeah, I followed up today, and he told that he didn't have time to get to it just yet, so he will ping me as soon as he will have any questions.
Okay. Also, the second thing is maybe it's interesting because Jacek, you talked about the mutable resources, and so as it was mentioned earlier, there is a new PR that is improving them, and during ETH Berlin, Luis made a project that uses them for some collaborative Pong game, so we can look at the code for that. It probably will be easier than what was done in Cardano, and it should work. So yeah, and the idea I wanted to mention is maybe if we want to experiment with the Swarm stuff, we can first try on the desktop, since it doesn't require development of a light client. And the other thing is that we should, if it seems like a plausible, if we confirm that we really need Swarm light client on mobile, then we should contribute to the development, because right now it's kind of at a dead end.
About contributing, I know that Ivan Daniluk has been looking into it a little bit. He knows best what's going on there. They're having a little bit of trouble defining exactly what it's like, what a light client is, how it should operate in the network. So there's a bit of research to do there first. Yeah.
No, actually, I missed last couple of meetings with Light Swarm team, but as far as I remember and followed, there is no like real progress on it yet. They started working, but it's like very, very, very first steps towards something working. So nothing that we can test out yet.
Well, the idea could be that we actually work on it and make it work to our specification without really waiting on them.
Yeah, from what I understood, they expect us to work on it.
No, they want our help, but you know, for us it's actually much harder to provide some, you know, initiative here, because we don't understand Swarm the way they understand, like core developers. So I'm kind of I'm trying to keep keep reading their conversations and follow their work to find like where the best place we can jump in with development. But I think, at least for me, it requires more time spent and like becoming a core Swarm developer for that. I'm planning to keep this, maybe devote more time for this, but not till now.
So I guess in terms of what Eric's initial point, so it seems like maybe we don't have resources to sort of develop, like contribute to Swarm Light right now, but that might change. But more immediately, like to Eric's point, that we can start experimenting with on desktop already. Do people think that seems like a reasonable thing to do? And do you have any thoughts around how we would go about that, so we don't break existing things and all of this? Does it seem like a worthwhile thing to people?
Sorry, I'm not sure I get the question. Can you repeat this?
So one of Eric's the outcomes he wanted was to sort of check if we agree on experimenting with Swarm and PSS on desktop, with the idea being that we don't need in light mode.
Yeah, that makes sense, because like from my intuition, Light Swarm will be available maybe like in half a year, maybe. I don't know.
Eric, can you explain what the connection is between the peer-to-peer Whisper stuff is separate from this, I guess. So what in your view, what sort of would be the advantages around the PSS, and how do you think it fits with, or is that sort of the part of the goal of the experimentation?
Yeah, there is really three different things. So the libpeer-to-peer thing is this ongoing effort in Ethereum for Ethereum to switch from div peer-to-peer to libpeer-to-peer, and Whisper is the test subject for it. So we're just so I think that we can leave aside for now and see how Guillaume is doing with it. maybe we will be asked to try it out on one of our test fleets at some point. Then the second thing is Swarm itself. So I guess one of the first features we can try to implement is sharing files through using Swarm on the desktop client, because that will be something that will be quickly needed if we start using it in replacement for Slack. And then the third thing is consider PSS as an alternative to Whisper, since it's designed for end-to-end communication. But I mean, we can start by just trying to use Swarm first, and then we will see about PSS.
It makes sense to me that to experiment with this. Is it something that you want to own?
Sorry?
Is it something that you want to own, this effort in experimenting with it?
Yeah, sure. I was planning to start working on desktop this week, just finishing the something else, and yeah, that could be my first.
Do you want to write up an idea as well, and maybe other people can join in this more clarity in what we're trying to achieve?
Okay.
Do people have any other thoughts on sort of using PSS, as well as maybe if there's some leftovers on breaking Whisper, if there's some specific help that's needed, or if there's something we should follow up on?
Yeah, in terms of the breaking Whisper stuff, anyone who's interested in trying to help figure out the necessary metrics needed to test scalability of Whisper, please join the channel and help out. And there's a living document there that's listing the types of things we need from the simulator, as well as the types of tests we're going to have, and how we're going to test this stuff. And so I'd like to get that underway as fast as possible. So that'll help us make these types of decisions. If there is an immediacy to do so, we'll know it by figuring out where things break.
Awesome. All right. If no one else has anything else, we can move on to reproducible builds. And I think that's Ivan.
Yeah, I actually wanted to briefly discuss idea for reproducible builds for status Go, but I can give the high level overview for the whole problem. So the idea is that we want to have reproducibility in our builds. So the path from the source to the binary for users is kind of reproducible and verifiable. It's kind of two separate problems, reproducibility and verifiability, and we're trying to solve first one. There are a few reasons for that, security, one of them, and we also, this is requirement for, I think, F-Droid project. So I can't speak now for status React, and I think that's the hardest part of this, for this challenge for us. But for status Go, wait a second, I will share the slides. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is actually a very specific topic for Go developers. So I will be as quick as possible. It's describing an issue in issue 1185. So the problem is that Go gives us a reproducibility almost out of the box. So most of the problems already solved. You can build, if you have the same Go version and dependencies and everything, it gives the same binary, almost the same. If you happen to build in a different absolute source path directory, which is probably true for most users, the binary will be different. And that was the problem. And we could solve it by Docker. This is our current thinking, which will be the best solution for that. But Docker feels too heavy for, just faking dir path, right? So I was thinking about change root, some lighter containerization like LXCs, maybe using LD preload hacks like by intercepting getCD, syscall, etc., but they too hacky and require root. So I took a closer look to the binaries, and actually they differ in like 30 bytes only. I mean, the binaries built with the same set of tooling, but in the different directories. And I noticed that the difference is the build ID value. Build ID is 60 bytes that go stamp each binary. And it consists from two, sorry, it's too technical, but I will try to be as quick as possible. So it consists from the hash of the inputs and the output. And what differs is inputs. Inputs are different, but we actually care about outputs. So my thinking was maybe we can just on the build, on like when you run make go status go release, we can analyze if the output is correct from build ID, and if it's true, so we can just replace the whole, like override the binary with this simple command. It's a bit hacky approach, but it results in the byte in byte equal binaries. And I don't know, I like it. It's actually like saying, hey, we don't care what your import path or your absolute source directory is, but as long as Go tooling provide the same binary, the same output, we consider this exactly the same. So I posted the issue on in status Go repo. Please, you can read for more details, and if you have some questions towards this, let's talk. I mean, I just want to hear the thoughts and feedback on this. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Cool. Sounds much less hacky than the alternatives.
Yeah, it's fast. It doesn't require root access, no Docker, but yeah, there are some questions.
The guarantee that we give the user, as long as he can execute, if it's a valid executable and he can test it that it's the same, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, can I be? I want to get some clarity here. You said this solution allows us to paste a hash and have people check it, because it's what you're doing is you're making an extra command in the end build process, correct?
Yeah, actually,
we should be able to. Go ahead.
Yeah, continue. Okay, there is another interesting thing that if you see my mouse here, this content ID from the main A, which is basically the binary intermediary binary generated by Go tooling, it will be equal even in cross-platform fashion. So this content ID for binary will be different between, for example, macOS builds and Linux builds, but this one third value will be equal even if one user builds in Linux and other user builds on the macOS or Windows. And this is really cool because we can actually verify if it's the same binary even in cross-platform fashion. We don't need this probably, but this is still very cool. I mean, it's better than checking the hash of the binary itself. All right. So,
there's a key point that I want to make sure is that this needs to be incredibly easy for people to do, because they're like most people have a hard time just checking a hash. So if we need to be able to publish something and allow people to check that easily when they build it themselves to make sure that it gets what we publish. If that's not an easy process, then it's not gonna work.
True. Yeah. Yeah, but as I said, the major problem with reproducible builds for us is the status React. And we had a call on this 2 days ago, and we agreed that the biggest problem is that we probably don't have anyone who truly understand the whole complexities of the status React build pipeline. So it's like 4 or 5 different stack technologies with different sets of dependencies of tooling, and it's many of them are far from perfect. And so yeah, I think we agreed that we need to break down this status React build pipeline into the stages and solve reproducibility for all of these stages, and then try to answer the question for the whole build. There is a channel. There is a channel, deterministic builds. Join us if you're interested.
So yeah. No, I was just thinking with steps like one thing just as an initial step is to just on one system run the entire pipeline, sort of print out or like the file tree structure with MD5s or whatever, and then do the same thing again, and just see which kind of folders are moving around a lot, and then sort of start from there. And you can probably get like some parallel work in terms of, well, here are 5 libraries that have some kind of time thing, or these seem to be indeterministic in their order because of node or whatever. So that's probably one way of doing it, because if you can get to the state where you can run the same thing on the same machine and it produces the same sort of Merkle root or whatever of a folder structure, that's a pretty solid start. And then you probably need to go deeper than that. But I think just getting there will be a start, and something that can be done outside of sort of the Salesforce stuff, like in parallel. I don't know if there's any Clojure developers in that swarm, but that would be one way of starting with it.
Right. Okay, that's it for reproducible builds. So should I jump to the next topic?
Yeah, sure. Whisper simulation visualization toolkit. Right. So it's actually related to breaking Whisper, and I'm glad that this channel emerged, because it shows the new interest to understanding Whisper. So this is I just want to quickly showcase the project I started to work in April. Because my main goal was to be able to simulate Whisper behavior on different networks, play with these networks, and visualize it to have intuition about how it behaves. Because we have very poor intuition with peer-to-peer, and we almost have no data, no actual data. So the project actually currently is just a set of three repositories, 3 commands, and they buggy. I'm an only user of this, so you need like instructions to make them work. You need to copy output of one program to another program. But in the essence, it's the generator of network topologies, different random graphs generators. It's a simulator that runs real Whisper v6 code on top of this network topology using the P2P simulation framework from Go Ethereum, created by Swarm team, by the way. And then it provides, well, this is enough to get some data from this simulation. But it also, and the third project is the 3D visualization of this. And so probably many of you have seen already, so it looks like this. This is the net, I think it's 300 networks, and in red you see how message is propagated. And I started to work on this visualization, but there were 2 problems with that. First of all, there was not enough interest, so I always had other tasks to do, so it kind of stalled the project. And the second one is a JavaScript, and I'm not trying to like start language wars, right? But it was an issue for me. I wrote a few huge projects in JavaScript and frameworks, but I still can't write the like testable, maintainable JavaScript code. So it was hindering me from advancing. So what I started doing now, this sounds crazy probably, but I started rewriting front end in Vecti. It's a Gopher.js based framework. It's similar to React, but in Go. And Gopher.js is Go to JavaScript Transpiler. I know this sounds stupid and crazy, and we probably should have found some experienced JavaScript developers. And if you are one of them, just join me if you're interested. But actually, I was surprised how cool this is. So this is a example what I have now, and I just spent a few days on this. So I've been able to add, a lot of configuration. I can now upload this and run actually
physics algorithm. This graph is based on force-directed algorithm, and I able to run this in the browser. I can't imagine writing this myself in JavaScript. So anyway, I mean, this allows me to advance much quicker than with JavaScript. And so there is not a single line of code in JavaScript in this front end. So this is really cool. I'm learning the framework, and it's readable. It's in some parts it's very similar to the JavaScript, because sometimes you just call raw JavaScript, but you know, it's readable, it's extensible. You can use all the power of Go tooling for that. So I'm going to continue work on this, and yeah, join us in Breaking Whisper channel if you're interested. And if you have use cases for these simulations for visualizations, please talk to me, because I'm just doing what I want myself. But if I get more inputs, that will help to build a proper tooling that other people can use to verify ideas. And one thing that I really want to work on as well on the basis of this tooling is simulation and visualization of different discovery protocols. So we right now using two protocols, Disk V5 and Rendezvous. And I mean, I read the code, I read the specs, but it's still like mostly the black box for me. So I want to understand and visualize this as well. Yeah, so that's it. I just want to share this so everyone aware that this project exists, and join me if you're interested. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I think we have 10 more minutes. I guess desktop. It's a bunch of stuff here, and then we have chat PFS. Maybe we can skip unless there's something. We'll see. And then we have ENS. I guess, how do people feel about staying tiny bit longer than planned? Just from a time point of view.
I'm fine. Continuing to take notes for as long as we need to.
Yeah, it's okay.
Right. Let's move on with. Okay, Anton has to run. I guess. Should we do, Anton? Do you have something specific you want to take up from test team?
Actually, nothing specific except from we'll continue working on desktop automation. It will be ready this week. And for blocking PR from merge, we are almost there. And there are PRs which are merged without testing. We don't want this to be. So we will introduce in this or next week, like 100% past tests for everything, and we'll block each PR from merge if there are not the automated test results, at least. That's it from our side.
Okay, awesome. I guess, yeah, let's go into desktop.
Hi, guys. So I just wanted to discuss what would be your opinions onto the further trajectory of desktop development, because I clearly see that at least what we have in the status desktop project labeled as an item required for the 0.10 release, which would be our first beta, is quite different from what people's expectations are. And we've been probing some of those items from the wish list, like Riot Bridge or private chats, threads, and it doesn't seem that we'll be able to complete them in just a couple of weeks. So I just wanted to ask your opinion and gather some input on what do you think we could either do together, like desktop plus chat team, and what could be somehow circumvented as a temporary measure until we have those features in desktop. So we've had a lot of input from Nibus team and Jacek specifically. They've gathered a really nice list of items that would be nice to have. Private chats, Riot Bridge, fixing bandwidth issues, threads, markdown, some other niceties. And additionally, we've discussed today already in some of the previous items the possibility to use the status desktop as a
as a substitution for mail server nodes or something like that. And this goes quite together with some performance and security issues that we still have. For instance, currently application runs two processes. One is the Qt native application. Another one is a Node.js server process. They communicate via a port. There is no encryption on that channel, so this potentially could be hijacked. And this, I think, is a bit of a problem that we should focus on, even given that one of the first item in our principles that we've all signed is that we don't compromise on security. So this is important. And also with regards to performance, we are having some issues that we'll need to fix. And I'm thinking that this should have as high priority as possible. And this would also be a prerequisite to any usage, any reliable real world usage of Status Desktop as an Ethereum node. Some of these items, I believe, and well, Max is the guru here, so he's been experimenting with embedding the JS server process into the Qt application, so that we get rid of this double process conundrum, and therefore increase our security somehow. This would also help us with performance, because then we would not have an inter-process communication pipeline working each time you get some UI updates, or vice versa. But anyway, there will be still some more. We have some long-standing issues with performance that need fixing. So this might also preclude temporarily in the coming weeks or months usage of Status Desktop as a node. And yeah, so what would your thoughts be? Like, at least my line of thinking is that we would definitely need to work hard on improving performance and also as a security point. But whether this is, even then, whether this is a must for the 0.10, I don't know, it's a question. I'm not sure. But this is very important, not even mentioning the other items like private chats and UI stuff like Markdown support, etc., etc. Right now, I'm just nodded. So what we have right now in the list of items to do, most of these things are native stuff, low-level specific code. Very little, if any, from the items still left for the 0.10 release pertains to closure side of things or Go side of things. There are items that are in the to-do list, which might also include the threads, Markdown, and all that other stuff, but they will take time. And for now, we have decided to postpone them. So the initial release will not include those. So this might mean, obviously, that we'll have to engineer some shortcuts to bypass those missing features temporarily. Yeah, so that's the current state of the art with regards to desktop. Chad, if you're on the line, please correct me or provide your input to this. But yeah, the goal of this discussion for me would be to gather a bit more input as to how teams across Status are going to cope with the situation once the desktop transition happens.
I just wanted to mention that although the Nimbus team has given the log list, I think we're maybe one of the less important teams. A lot of our project problems can we solve with bridging, but like we have a community outreach, but the thing with the Nimbus team is that we really don't have the means to fix any bugs we find. So like in dog fooding, that's typically what you want to achieve, right? That you use the item and then you can fix it. But for the Nimbus team, we see it as like, we see it almost as an external third-party communication tool, and we have to pick one amongst many, like Git or like whatever, right? Because it's harder for us to shift context and fix things that we run into that are critical for our work. And a lot of our work is also a little bit about community outreach with the other Ethereum developers. We're kind of tied a bit more like that. So maybe we're the worst team to use as a benchmark or as a list of hard requirements, and we might be the best team to use for nice to have.
Yeah, thanks for input. I realized that. Yeah.
Do we have
of all the? Okay.
I was curious. What are the solutions for private group chats? There's a few chats that need to be private with regards to status, specifically like core vulnerabilities discussions and things like that. We don't want those to be automatically public, but eventually public once they're resolved. So what are our current ways of dealing with private group chats, or just need to take it off of status altogether, maybe move to something like email for that?
I would just keep it simple.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if we don't have if we don't have group chats until then, we can just use email or some, or whatever, really.
But what you told me, it's really interesting. We can make a group chat that can be released to the messages. Like we have the messages if we do this private group, and if we want to prove in the future that this communication, we can just show the decryption key.
Sorry, can you elaborate on that? Just show the encryption, like have private things and then show encryption keys, like that. That will give you backwards.
Yeah, I think yes, because as I imagine that the group chats, these keys that are used to encrypt messages will be changing once a while. So you can, if you want to release the message that this group, what are the contents, you just release these pass keys. So we can develop thinking on this in mind when we develop the group chats. I think it's something interesting to keep in mind.
Yeah, so
I don't think.
No, what it says, there are some group chats that do that basically. So there are two strategies. It depends on what your product is. So many chats, if you want new users to read the history of the chat, then some chats do exactly that. So basically, what they do, they ratchet the key using a hash ratchet, but then they keep all the keys so that when a user comes in, like a new user comes in, they give him the old key so he can ratchet and he can decrypt the new messages. So that gives you basically, allows users that were not in the chat before to decrypt previous conversations.
That would work. I think this would work, but in this case, this group chat would not get these new users. It would be like a public private chat, something. It's something I think new and never seen before.
Vitaly, what's the most pressing question that you would like to have discuss here? Just what's sort of the most pressing thing that you want to get out of this?
Well, I'd like to get started with security, I think, because I've been also thinking over some possible scenarios, like let's say a team moves to status desktop and we don't have any protection against, let's say, spammers joining public channels and ruining them with empty messages or stuff like that. Or maybe I'm missing something, like a way to block users if we don't have private chat capability. I don't know.
Maybe that will.
Sorry, I lost you for a second. Is this the same for everyone? Oscar?
Yeah, it's the same. Oscar, you're breaking up.
Maybe Oscar can type and someone can read. have you considered writing NIM for desktop? I think this is the question. Let's see here the question exactly. Have you considered writing a NIM desktop port?
I think that was targeted to Jacek, and I really sense a good dose of humor in the question.
Sorry. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe we should move on. He left the call. I think he's having some connectivity issues.
No, I think he's hosting it, so he didn't leave. He just can't talk.
Well, maybe in the meanwhile, really going back to this question of a possibility of flooding some public channels that we use internally at Status with some external fake users. Is there any protection mechanism, for instance, that you know about? I don't know, some kind of blocking users or anything, because if we are, if we go like full-blown public mode, it will be very easy to disrupt communications.
I think this was the original motivation to move to Slack, basically, that there was no way to protect things. And I think the private group chat, it's more of a priority question than a technical one. Like, group chat can be solved if we need to, but one way to protect against spam is to only use private group chats, and then have some sort of channel where people can get invited by they post a message there and they get invited to the private group chat and sort of pass a test like that, a human test. But it also increases the barrier of entry, of course.
Is there any way to kick people off a chat, either public or private?
No, but you can ignore their messages. Well, I mean, we can implement something that allows us to ignore their messages. But I think we probably will have a few weeks before spamming starts being a thing. And we can think about that when it starts happening. I would maybe, for instance, we have an easy way to share a list of banned users, or maybe a whitelist, like if someone posts. Also, there was the discussion about filters based on content. So if someone shares some free Bitcoin string or free ETH, that kind of stuff, we can ban some keywords. But again, it's on your side. It's not. You cannot ban anything on the Whisper channel. It's only the UI.
So some months ago, I written a discussion at Discuss Status AM about visibility stake for public chat room governance. This is an idea that users that spam the network or send messages that are offensive, something like this, could get a deposit that they need to deposit to have their message visible. So if they wanna, the UI could configure itself if you want to see users that don't deposit this visibility stake, or if you want. So if you want to cut off the spam and bad messages, you just raise your visibility minimum to display the messages in this group. So I can post the link and we can further discuss on this, but it's a really interesting thing to discuss, and there is a lot of potential of SNET usage in top of that. Also, in a way that if you do a good work in voting what is a bad message or if it's a good, you also would earn SNET for doing that. So it's a really interesting feature we can develop there. also for these private groups, I think we need to decide what kind of encryption method we need because there is this problem of the keys that you need them to encrypt a message that some people can have the access and others don't. So
for that, Ricardo, we should probably look into proxy re-encryption that allows you to give access and revoke access.
Yeah, I saw that call, and then we need to decide. I think go on to that.
I talked with Tux, who's one of the leading guys at NewCipher, and he said that'd be a perfect use case for what they end up doing, and he'd be willing to come and talk with us about how to do it.
I suggest looking a bit more further into NewCipher, just because I know that's the PR, but when they mean that it's good to be used for group chats, there are some caveats. Like the idea is that it's good for group chats because you're offloading the encryption to them. But
no, I specifically asked if we don't use their network, we just use the idea of proxy re-encryption ourselves.
Okay. Have a look. Just basically, essentially, it's proxy encryption is what it says it is. You're basically allowing someone else to re-encrypt the message for you. So in our case, if you look at our system and compare with proxy encryption, it doesn't really help us that much. You get the same because you still have to re-encrypt it 10 times. The nice thing is that it allows a proxy to re-encrypt it for you for another recipient. And you need to encrypt it with your public key. So once you have generated a shared key, there are loads of, I think it's a slightly different use case from what we need.
Yeah, I'm with Andrea here. I've spoken to NewCipher as well and thought about it. And a lot of the points Andrea makes are very contentious for our use case.
Cool. So is it not worth even setting up a meeting with them to talk, or we can just look into it ourselves or just pass it all together?
I think, I'd be very interested in having a meeting, to be fair, because, I'm not sure it's for our use case, but, they know better probably than they created the product. So.
There's a presentation from the Swarm conference as well on YouTube if you want to hear an intro of them speaking about their stuff.
I've also interviewed them on hashing it out and dove into a little bit on the what to use proxy encryption for and how it works on their end.
Also, when I didn't knew about this solution, I always thinking about using a common shared key among everyone there, so everyone encrypts their message to this shared key. I know there is this problem in synchronization. Then we might use the blockchain, but then of course you sign the message with your public key, and then you encrypt that shared key, and then only people that knows this this key can decrypt it. And then later we can review this key so users can read it.
In the interest of time, maybe we should come back to the question that Vitaly was asking, whether security is the most important feature we can imagine for the chat, and then the specifics of how we can move on. You're online back?
Yeah, sorry, I just dropped, and it was difficult to rejoin as a host with Zoom and everything. I agree with what Jacek just said. And I guess we should start to finish it up. So maybe if there's something we can do, if there's some brief question, we can probably talk about it more. But this is something specific that we should answer that you want to ask people right now, Vitaly.
No, that's actually I've got enough input to ponder. Thanks, guys. That's really an open question, but no time to discuss it now.
Okay, cool. And then PFS, is it okay if we skip that one for now? Or is it something specific?
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then ENS usernames. Is there something specific that you would like to talk about here briefly?
I think the most important thing is about when you have these public chats, users that register their usernames, they might want to have their username that they registered displaying in this public chat. But also they might want to not show it every time. So first we need to solve how we can reverse find the username. So there is two problems. First of all, in the ENS, the usernames are hashed. So, and you don't register the public key to resolve to a hash of the username. Of course, we could implement that, but I think the most simple solution to solve that would be when the users want to identify themselves with their usernames in a public chat to people that don't know him, doesn't have in the context. They send also with the message in the payload the username in plain text, so everyone can then the clients can check in the ENS registry what is the resolver, and then try to resolve the public key to see if it matches with the user that sent that message. So we just verify ourselves. So or some users could try to like send, oh, I'm thinking that I'm Jared, but I doesn't. Then this message will be fake. Like it doesn't even be displayed at all, because the clients will be seeing that the user is trying to do something that it's illegal. Basically, doesn't someone have some comments on this? I didn't understand what you told. Sorry.
Sorry, what is the thing that what sort of outcome you would like from the group, from this discussion?
Because it's not like I developed the app of ENS usernames with the team, and but this part is going to be implemented by the status React team. So actually, I'm just suggesting how this could be done. So I'm suggesting how this could be done. So I don't know when this is going to be implemented, but I think
is there a swarm for this?
Maybe we should need to open a swarm.
People like cluster programs. I think there is one already, right?
The current swarm is for creating the ENS registration the app, but we can maybe extend this swarm to also alter the status React, or make a new swarm. What's your idea about that?
I know Rachel was coordinating with all the sort of product teams before. Is Rachel on? No. Do you think maybe we could talk about it? Maybe talk about it in the 151 channel, because I think there's been some work around how ENS looks in the wallet and apps and so on. Maybe it's something that could continue there.
Okay, so there is this problem of resolving the usernames in the public chat messages, and also about enabling and disabling the usernames. So the goal is actually to discuss and find how the team wants to implement ENS usernames in the status application, in desktop, in mobile, everywhere. So this is my kind of I have my idea on how to develop that. So if someone wants to further discuss this, I'm in the ENS usernames chat room. Just reach me there. So I think it's this.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. Sorry to cut off. I think because we're running out of time a bit. So I guess this is someone that has any thoughts on around that and how to implement that across status, or are there something? Is there something else that someone wants to bring up sort of generally before we end this call?
So,
sorry everyone for. Sorry.
Okay, also there is about the resolving, and then about enabling and disabling the username in the public chats. So maybe we can have two keys, or just don't send that payload with the act like you didn't register it. So then only whoever have you in the context will see your username in the public chats. So that yes, so it's for any usernames. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Is there something else that someone wants to bring up while the group is here? All right, cool. Thanks, everyone. Please have a look at the HackMD notes. And sorry again about running over time. We'll figure out something better for next time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, guys. It was nice meeting you. Bye.